Before you scroll away, let me tell you something that might just change how you see people forever. It happened on an ordinary afternoon in a busy downtown cafe, and by the end of this story, you might just hit the like button and subscribe, because you'll realize that real heroes walk among us, quietly, without asking for recognition. It was raining outside, the kind of soft drizzle that makes people hunch their shoulders and hurry home. Inside the cafe, however, the atmosphere was warm and buzzing with chatter. Sitting at a corner table, Clara Rivers, the CEO of a rapidly growing tech company, was quietly reviewing notes on her laptop. Her sharp, professional suit and confident posture made her look untouchable, but her eyes told another story, one of exhaustion and a heavy heart. Across from her sat Jack Turner, a broad-shouldered man in a simple black t-shirt, sipping coffee. Jack was a single dad, a man who had served years in the Navy SEALs before retiring to raise his daughter, Emma, after his wife passed away. Jack didn't talk much about his past. To most people, he was just the friendly neighbor who volunteered at the local youth center. But today, he was there for a different reason. Clara was not just a friend, she had been his late wife's college roommate, and she had been quietly mentoring him and starting a small business to support Emma's education. The cafe door swung open with a sharp jingle, and in walked three men, loud and brash. They were from a rival company that had been trying to undercut Clara's business for months. Clara stiffened as soon as she saw them. She had faced them in meetings, endured their crude comments and public humiliation, and refused their aggressive buyout offers. But here, outside the boardroom, they felt freer to act worse. One of them, a tall man with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, strolled right up to Clara's table. Well, if it isn't the Ice Queen herself," he said, leaning too close. "What's the matter? Not enough men in your life, so you hide behind your fancy suits?" His friends laughed loudly. Clara's fingers tightened around her coffee cup, but she didn't respond. She'd learned that reacting only gave bullies more power. Still, their words stung. They started making louder remarks, mocking her company, her leadership, even her appearance. Jack's jaw tightened. He'd seen this kind of intimidation before, in war zones and back alleys, and it never sat right with him. When one of the men reached out and tried to touch Clara's hair, Jack moved. Slowly, deliberately, he set his coffee cup down, stood up, and stepped between Clara and the men. "Back up," he said quietly. The tall man laughed. "Oh, look, the boyfriend's here to play hero." The other two spread out, clearly thinking they could intimidate Jack. What they didn't know, and couldn't have known, was that the man in front of them had endured freezing oceans, brutal training, and life-or-death missions. And when it came to protecting someone, Jack didn't hesitate. The first punch came from one of the friends. It never landed. Jack's reflexes were a blur. He sidestepped, grabbed the man's arm, and twisted just enough to send him sprawling. The second man charged, and Jack dropped him with a clean sweep to the legs. The tall leader tried to throw a punch, but Jack blocked it with one arm and used the other to strike just hard enough to make the man rethink his life choices. But it didn't end there. Their shouting attracted more of their crew from outside, 5 more men, all stomping in like they owned the place. The cafe went silent except for the sound of chairs scraping as customers backed away. Clara's heart pounded. She knew Jack was strong, but this was too many. Jack looked at her once, and in that moment, there was a calm assurance in his eyes that told her, "I've got this." What followed was not chaos, it was precision. Every movement Jack made was controlled, efficient, and utterly confident. He didn't just fight, he neutralized threats. It wasn't about ego or revenge, it was about making sure no one would dare hurt Clara, or anyone else, again. In under a minute, all 8 men were either groaning on the floor or stumbling out into the rain. The cafe erupted in whispers. Someone had caught the whole thing on their phone. Jack, breathing steadily, simply turned back to Clara and asked, "You okay?" She nodded, her throat tight. "Jack, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did," he interrupted softly. "No one gets to treat you like that. Not while I'm here." For the first time in weeks, Clara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. She realized she'd been fighting her battles alone for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone stand beside her. Jack gathered his jacket, ready to leave, but the cafe owner stopped him, thanking him for what he'd done. Later that evening, as Clara sat at home, She found herself replaying the moment Jack stood up for her, not just the fight, but the way he carried himself afterward, quietly, without looking for recognition. Heroes like that didn't need applause, they just needed to know they'd done the right thing. The next day, the video went viral. People weren't just impressed by Jack's skill, they were inspired by his quiet strength and the way he stood up against bullies without hesitation. Messages poured in from strangers who said the story gave them courage to stand up for themselves or for others. And that's the part one wants you to remember, you never really know who's sitting beside you. It could be someone who's fought battles you'll never see, someone who carries scars you'll never know, and someone who will protect you without ever asking for thanks. So if this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of the kind of courage the world needs more of, hit that like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more real stories that remind us of the good still out there. Because heroes, they walk among us. Sometimes in plain clothes. Sometimes in coffee shops. Always ready. The video of Jack defending Clara didn't just rack up views, it sparked debates across social media. People wanted to know who he was, where he learned to fight like that, and why he stepped in. Jack, however, avoided the spotlight. When local reporters knocked on his apartment door, he simply said, "I'm just a dad who wanted to make sure my friend was safe," and closed it again. But for Clara, the aftermath was more complicated. The rival company whose men had harassed her wasn't happy with the humiliation. Within days, she began receiving threatening emails. Her company's servers were hacked twice, her clients were approached with false rumors, and one night, she came home to find her car vandalized. She didn't want to burden Jack, he had enough on his plate raising Emma alone, but the weight was becoming unbearable. Clara had fought her way to the top of the tech world without shortcuts, and she refused to let a group of bullies push her out. Still, the pressure was suffocating. Jack noticed the change immediately. Over coffee one morning, he said, "You're sleeping less, eating less, and your smile's gone. Tell me what's going on." Clara tried to brush it off, but Jack wasn't buying it. When she finally told him about the threats, something in his eyes hardened. "Then they've made a mistake," he said, standing. "They think they can scare you. They don't know what real fear is." Jack's Navy SEAL instincts kicked in. He started by quietly running background checks on the men, mapping their routines, and identifying who was pulling the strings. Clara was stunned by how methodical he was, every detail recorded, every possibility considered. She had always thought of Jack as a kind, protective father, but now she saw the soldier beneath the surface, disciplined, sharp, and utterly fearless. A week later, Clara was scheduled to speak at a major tech conference. Jack insisted on accompanying her. "If they're going to try something," he said, "it'll be in public where they think they can embarrass you." The conference hall was massive, buzzing with investors, reporters, and entrepreneurs. Clara stepped onto the stage, her voice steady as she began her keynote speech. Jack stood in the shadows near the back, scanning the crowd. Years of military training had taught him to read micro-expressions, body language, and intent, and it wasn't long before he spotted them. 3 men from the rival company slipped in through a side entrance, one holding what looked like a camera bag but moved like it was too heavy to be just equipment. Jack's heart rate didn't spike. Instead, everything slowed down. He moved, silent as a shadow, positioning himself between them and Clara. When one of the men reached into the bag, Jack closed the distance in 3 strides. "Not today," he murmured, grabbing the man's wrist before he could pull out the hidden object, a canister of spray paint meant to vandalize the stage and disrupt her speech. The other 2 moved in, but Jack's response was instantaneous. A quick elbow, a foot sweep, and within seconds, all 3 were incapacitated, security rushing in to take over. From the stage, Clara paused mid-sentence, her eyes finding Jack. He gave her a small nod, and she knew once again he'd just saved her. After the conference, Clara asked him, "Why do you keep doing this? You could walk away and live a peaceful life." Jack's answer was simple. "Because I know what it's like to fight alone. And I won't let you." Over the next months, Clara's company not only survived but thrived. Jack's quiet protection gave her the breathing room to focus on her vision. She, in turn, helped Jack launch his own security consultancy, something that allowed him to provide for Emma while doing what he did best, keeping people safe. The viral video slowly faded from headlines, but those who'd seen it never forgot.